In the shadow of history, beneath the towering columns of Egypt's sacred temples, lies a tragic story of power, betrayal, and murder. A story so chilling that it has been buried, erased, almost forgotten. Cleopatra, the queen who captivated the Roman Empire, was not the only powerful woman of her family. Her sister, Arsinoe IV, was once a rival, a woman whose claim to the throne was just as strong as Cleopatra's. And yet, history remembers her only as a casualty in Cleopatra's rise to power, her murder, her death, lost in the dusty corners of time. But what if the truth of Arsinoe's fate is far darker than we know? What if her final days, her tragic and mysterious end, are more significant than we've been told? In this video, we'll uncover the story that history tried to silence, the untold tale of Cleopatra's sister, and the terrifying secret of her death. Stay with me as we dive into the shadows of the past. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because this is a story you'll never forget. Before Cleopatra captured the hearts of the Romans and became Egypt's legendary queen, it was Arsinoe IV who had the ambition and drive to take the throne for herself. Born into the Ptolemaic dynasty, Arsinoe was just a child when she was thrust into the deadly political intrigue that defined her family. Her older sister, Cleopatra, already a queen, would eventually become the face of Egypt's power and charm. But Arsinoe had her own claim. She wasn't just Cleopatra's sister, she was a force in her own right, a young woman with the potential to wield the same influence over Egypt as Cleopatra had. The political landscape of Alexandria was a brutal one, and Arsinoe was caught in the swirling maelstrom of courtly warfare. By the time she was in her teens, the throne of Egypt became a prize that both sisters and the men around them fought to control. When their father, Ptolemy XII, died, a power struggle between the siblings erupted. Cleopatra, intelligent and politically astute, quickly secured Roman backing, positioning herself as the legitimate ruler. But Arsinoe, emboldened by the chaos of succession and the ruthless ambition running through her veins, also declared herself queen. With the help of allies in Egypt, she took control of Alexandria, declaring herself ruler in a bid to strip Cleopatra of her crown. But despite her strong will and strategic mind, Arsinoe's claim would be short-lived. Rome's political intervention, with Julius Caesar and Pompey pulling strings, ultimately led to Cleopatra's return to power. Arsinoe, defeated and betrayed, fled to the sanctuary of the Temple of Artemis in Ephesus, hoping for safety and protection within the hollowed walls of a sacred temple. The Temple of Artemis, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, was meant to be a symbol of hope and divine protection. Its towering columns, its sacred halls, were where kings and queens sought refuge in times of desperation. It was in this revered place, under the shadow of its massive marble structure, that Arsinoe IV took her last stand. She had hoped that the sanctity of the temple would shield her from Cleopatra's ruthless pursuit of power. After all, no one would dare stay in such a sacred place with blood, right? But history tells us that Cleopatra's ambition knew no boundaries, not even the sacred ones. Despite Arsinoe's flight to Ephesus and her entrenchment in the temple, Cleopatra could not allow her sister to remain a symbol of defiance. Her life had become a threat, her very existence a reminder of Cleopatra's tenuous hold on power. What started as a family rivalry had turned into a bitter struggle for control of Egypt, and no sacred ground, no divine law would protect Arsinoe from the inevitable.
In the grand sweep of history, there's little mention of the exact moment of Arsinoe's demise. Her death was erased, hidden away behind the gilded curtain of political power. Some historians argue that it was Cleopatra's lover, Julius Caesar, who ultimately ordered her execution. In this version of events, Cleopatra was not the one who personally gave the order, but she was complicit in her sister's death, a death that seemed to happen without fanfare, without justice, without anyone even noticing. It is said that Arsinoe was dragged from the temple, her fate sealed by the weight of Cleopatra's desire to secure her reign. The execution was swift, yet its brutality was hidden from the public eye, shrouded in secrecy. Some suggest that it was a quiet, almost ceremonial execution, one done under the cover of darkness, away from prying eyes. Was it a knife in the dark, a silent end to the life of a once promising ruler? Or did the executioner wield the sword with full knowledge of the blood that would stain Egypt's sacred ground? It's a question that continues to haunt historians, for the silence surrounding Arsinoe's death is deafening. The daughter of Ptolemy XII, the last hope of a dying dynasty, reduced to a mere whisper in the annals of history. Was she buried in the sands of Egypt, or was her body simply left to rot, forgotten by the very people she had tried to rule? What happened to the woman who once commanded armies, who once held Alexandria in her grasp, when her life was taken so mercilessly? Arsinoe's death was not just the tragic end of a sister's ambition, it marked the quiet removal of a rival who could never threaten Cleopatra's reign again. It's easy to imagine the conversations that must have followed in the quiet chambers of Alexandria, whispers between Cleopatra and her advisors as they planned her sister's end. In this ruthless Game of Thrones, the very blood that bound them was no protection. Arsinoe's fate was sealed not just by the ambition of her sister, but by the geopolitical forces that shaped the ancient world. The power of Rome, looming like a specter, controlled the destinies of Egypt's rulers, and Cleopatra knew that no threat to her rule could be tolerated. The silencing of Arsinoe was a quiet affair, intentionally understated in the grand scheme of history. It was not the type of public execution that would send ripples through Egypt. Rather, it was an act carried out in secrecy, with little fanfare, as though it was merely another casualty of war. It was almost as if Cleopatra sought to avoid leaving a trace of her sister's existence behind, erasing Arsinoe not just from the throne, but from memory itself. And in many ways, it worked. Arsinoe's death was written out of most historical records, her name often lost in the shadows of time, eclipsed by the more celebrated story of Cleopatra's rise and her entanglement with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. But perhaps it is in this erasure that we find the most tragic element of Arsinoe's story. She wasn't just another victim of Cleopatra's ambition. She was an ideal, a potential ruler in her own right, whose legacy was wiped from history by the very people who feared her claim. By eliminating her from the historical record, Cleopatra ensured that she would be remembered as the sole queen, the only ruler of Egypt worthy of the title. And yet in doing so, she cast a shadow on the very legacy she worked hard to secure. It's also worth considering how the political and historical dynamics of the time shaped the treatment of Arsinoe. Women in positions of power, particularly those in the ancient world, were not allowed the same merciful fates as their male counterparts. Cleopatra may have been powerful, but her sister's fate was decided by an ancient world that saw rival women as disposable objects in the pursuit of a singular, uncontested power. And thus, in the history of ancient Egypt, a sister's death became the sacrifice for another's survival. A woman's blood spilled in silence so that the other could wear the crown.
Arsinoe's life, her potential, her very humanity, was reduced to a mere footnote in a much larger historical drama. The tragic irony is that while Cleopatra may have removed Arsinoe from the throne, she could not erase the memory of her rival entirely. As time passed, those who sought to remember the fullness of Cleopatra's reign inevitably had to reckon with the dark truths of her ascent to power. Even though Arsinoe's story was buried, her existence remains a key part of the historical puzzle. The silence surrounding her death, the erasure of her life from the grand narrative of Egypt's royal history, has only made her story more haunting and tragic. Even now, centuries after the fall of the Ptolemaic dynasty, the story of Arsinoe IV's murder lingers in the echoes of time. No matter how hard history tries to forget her, the mystery of her death only deepens. Why was such a vital part of Cleopatra's story buried in silence? Why was Arsinoe's life allowed to be reduced to nothing more than a shadow in the court of her sister? What really happened to her after she was dragged from the temple of Artemis? These questions still remain unanswered, a haunting reminder of how power and politics can obscure the truth. Some historians claim that Arsinoe was executed swiftly,
with no regard for the sacredness of the temple she had fled to. Others suggest that her death was more insidious, a quiet poisoning, a slow and painful end. But the truth is obscured, lost in the corridors of time. We may never know exactly how Cleopatra's sister met her end, but one thing is certain. Arsinoe's story is not one of mere footnotes, not one of just forgotten rivalry. It is a tale of power, betrayal, and the silence that history often imposes on those who stand in the way of the great. Arsinoe IV, once a queen in waiting, was lost to time not by her own actions, but by the forces that sought to control her. Her life was extinguished by the political tides that shaped the ancient world, and her story was consumed by the shadows of Cleopatra's dominance. Yet, even now, in the quiet corners of history, Arsinoe's ghost lingers. Her tragic death a stark reminder that, in the pursuit of power, even the blood of kin can be spilled without hesitation. Her legacy, though forgotten by most, speaks to the harsh realities of ambition, the consequences of rivalry, and the cost of the crown. Cleopatra may have ruled the world with charm and intellect, but in the silent graves of her enemies, we find the price of power, the untold cost of silencing those who dared to challenge her. Thank you for watching. If you found this dark chapter of history haunting, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. And remember, history is never truly gone. It lingers in the whispers of the past, waiting to uncover.